it possible to have a heart that's lighter than a feather? To the ancient Egyptians, it was not only possible, but highly desirable. The afterlife of the ancient Egyptians was known as the Field of Reeds, a land just like what one knew, save that there was no sickness, no disappointment, and of course, no death. One lived eternally by the streams and beneath the trees which one had loved so well in one's life on earth. An Egyptian tomb inscription from 1400 BC regarding one's afterlife reads,
"May I walk every day unceasing on the banks of my water. May my soul rest on the branches of the trees which I have planted. May I refresh myself in the shadow of my sycamore."
To reach the eternal paradise of the Field of Reeds, however, one had to pass through the trials of Osiris, Lord of the Underworld and just judge of the dead. In the Hall of Truth, this trial involved the weighing of one's heart against the feather of truth. The gods were thought to have golden skin, though Osiris' skin was green from his own time in death. One maintained a light heart by embracing gratitude for all one had been given in life, and turning aside negative thoughts and energies. Ingratitude was considered a gateway sin that drew one down a dark path toward selfishness and sin. Sins were understood as thoughts and actions contrary to the value of ma'at, or harmony, which the white feather symbolized, that separated one from other people as well as from the gods. The worst of these sins was jealousy. Jealousy made the soul heavy with sin and weighed down the soul's heart. With a heavy heart, it was impossible for one to pass through the Hall of Truth and find paradise. This was a major concern for the ancient Egyptians, who believed their soul was eternal and understood that their life on earth was only one part of a much longer and grander journey. The ancient Egyptians recognized that when the soul first awoke in the afterlife, it might feel lost, possibly forgetting its life on earth, its death, and not knowing what to do next. In order to help the soul continue on its journey, artists and scribes would create paintings and write texts related to one's life on the walls of their tomb. These writings eventually developed into Egypt's famous Book of the Dead. Along with these directions, prayers were inscribed on the walls of tombs asking Osiris, as well as other gods, to show mercy for the soul. According to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the soul would be met by the god Anubis, who would lead it from its final resting place to the Hall of Truth. Images depict a queue of souls standing in the hall. A dead person's soul would join this line to await their own judgment. While waiting, one would be attended to by goddesses such as Kebet, daughter of Anubis, as well as Nephthys and Serket, who comforted souls and provided nourishment for them. When a soul's turn came up, Anubis would lead the soul to stand before Osiris and the scribe of the gods Thoth in front of golden scales. The goddess Ma'at, the personification of harmony and balance, would also be present. Then, 42 judges would consult with these gods on one's eternal fate. Afterwards, the soul would recite the negative confessions. In them, they needed to claim, honestly, that they had never committed certain sins. However, there was no single set list of negative confessions and no set list of sins which would apply to everyone. A military commander would have a different list of sins than, say, a judge or a baker. What didn't matter to the gods was the amount of one's sins, but the severity of the sins they had committed. A soul's claim to purity wouldn't win over Osiris because instead, he only paid attention to the weight of the soul's heart. If the soul was lighter than the feather, then the gods would have a meeting with the 42 judges. If they agreed that the soul was pure enough, the person could pass on towards paradise in the Field of Reeds. According to some ancient texts, the soul would then embark on a dangerous journey through the afterlife, and they would need a copy of the Egyptian Book of the Dead to guide them and assist them with spells needed if they were to run into trouble. According to others, however, it was only a short journey across Lily Lake from the Hall of Truth to paradise. In the Field of Reeds, one received everything back that was taken by death. Scholar Rosalie David describes this afterlife realm.
The underworld kingdom of Osiris was believed to be a place of lush vegetation, with eternal springtime, unfailing harvests, and no pain or suffering. It was a mirror image of Egypt, where rich and poor alike were provided with plots of land to grow crops. The location of this kingdom was either below the western horizon, or on a group of islands in the west.
For the soul with a heart lighter than a feather, friends and relatives who had died earlier would be waiting for them along with their home, their favorite objects, and even their long-lost pets. However, should the heart be heavier than the feather, it was thrown to the floor of the Hall of Truth, where it was devoured by the Gobbler, known as Amut or Amut. This god had the face of a crocodile, the front of a leopard, and the back of a rhinoceros. Once the Gobbler devoured the person's heart, the individual's soul then ceased to exist. There was no hell for the ancient Egyptians. Their fate worse than death was non-existence. It is a popular misconception that the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with death when, in reality, they were in love with life. Naturally, they just wanted to continue on after their bodily death. The Egyptians enjoyed singing, dancing, boating, hunting, fishing, and family gatherings, just as people enjoy them today. The elaborate funerary rites, mummification, and the placement of Shapti doll servants were not meant to celebrate death, but to provide hope that the soul would win admission to the Field of Reeds. Funerary rites and mummification worked to preserve a body for its soul's use in the afterlife. Eerily enough, it also allowed them to return in the future if they ever chose to visit Earth. A person's tomb served as an eternal home for the same reason, should the soul ever want to return. Shapti dolls were placed in a tomb to do one's work in the afterlife, so they could relax whenever they wanted. When the funeral was over, and all the prayers had been said for the safe travel of the departed, survivors could return to their homes with positive thoughts. Hopefully their loved one had a light heart, they could now find joy in paradise. 4,000 years later, funerals often serve a similar purpose, guiding the departed soul with support so they can access a better place than they found on earth. Whether in the 21st century or in ancient Egypt, concerning death, it seems people aren't so different after all.